The hum was a living thing, a low, constant thrumming that vibrated through the floor and up my spine. Red light, emergency beacon red, pulsed from unseen sources, bathing the narrow corridor in an oppressive glow. My breath hitched, a thin, rattling sound in the cold, dry air. Seth wasn't sure how Seth got here. One moment, Seth was adrift in the quiet despair of my cramped apartment, staring at the inheritance papers Seth hadn't yet touched. My head throbbed. This wasn't right. The walls were metallic panels, bolted together with industrial precision, gleaming faintly in the crimson light. Cables, thick as my arm, snaked along the ceiling and floor, disappearing into grates that hummed with unseen machinery. Server racks, I thought, somewhere beyond these walls. This was a server room corridor, a maintenance access way, sterile and functional. But it was also endless. I turned, a slow pivot, my worn sneakers squeaking on the polished concrete. The corridor stretched behind me, identical to the stretch in front. No doors, no emergency exits, just the relentless mechanical hum and the pulsing red. Where was the way out? A sudden, sharp crack echoed from somewhere ahead, making me jump. It sounded like a whip, or perhaps a circuit shorting out. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to calm the frantic rhythm. This couldn't be real. Seth had to be dreaming, or having some kind of stress-induced hallucination. The papers, the inheritance, it had all been too much, too sudden, a bizarre twist in a life that had only known quiet decline since everything. Was Seth truly trapped here? Seth started walking, my footsteps unnaturally loud in the pervasive hum. Left, right, left, right. The corridor didn't change. Each panel was identical, each cable bundle a carbon copy of the last. My mind, still fuzzy from the abrupt transition, struggled to grasp the enormity of the wrongness. I pulled my arms around myself, shivering. There had to be an end, a junction, something. My throat felt tight. How long had I been walking? Hello? My voice was a weak croak, swallowed almost immediately by the hum. No answer. Just the steady, indifferent thrumming. The red light seemed to intensify, burning into my retinas, painting the inside of my eyelids crimson when I blinked. I started to jog, then run, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The corridor blurred into a tunnel of pulsing red, the metallic walls a dizzying streak. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but the landscape remained unchanged. It was an impassable space, a cruel joke of perspective. What was this place, and why was I here? I stumbled, my vision swimming. Seth stopped, panting, leaning against a cold metal panel. It vibrated beneath my palm, a constant, low tremor. My reflection in the polished surface was distorted, stretched and warped by the curvature, my eyes wide, pupils dilated in the dim light. Seth barely recognized the haunted face staring back. It was Seth losing my mind. Then, as abruptly as Seth had arrived, the server room corridor dissolved. The metallic tang vanished, the hum faded, the red light extinguished itself like a snuffed candle. Seth was standing in a vast, echoing foyer, the air thick with dust and the cloying scent of decay. Sunlight, pale and watery, filtered through grimy, leaded glass windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. My breath caught in my throat. Seth was back. Or rather, Seth was where Seth was supposed to be, the inherited house. The transition was so jarring, so absolute, that for a moment Seth swayed, clutching at an ornate, dust-shrouded newel post. Had the server room been a dream? The house was enormous, far larger than Seth had anticipated from the grainy photos in the solicitor's packet. Cobwebs hung like tattered lace from every corner, and the silence was profound, broken only by the occasional creak of settling wood or the distant drip of water. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming, a monument to forgotten grandeur. I took a hesitant step further inside, my sneakers crunching on fallen plaster and what felt like dried leaves. This was supposed to be my fresh start, my escape from the suffocating emptiness of my old life. My suitcase, the one Seth had packed so carefully just yesterday, sat by the front door, a starkly modern anomaly in this ancient space. Seth must have brought it in, Seth reasoned, though Seth had no memory of doing so. The silver key, the one the solicitor had given me, was surprisingly ornate, almost medieval in its design. It felt wrong, somehow, in my hand. Seth ran my thumb over its intricate engravings, a faint unease prickling at the back of my neck. Had Seth locked the door behind me? The drawing room, with its faded velvet furniture and shrouded piano, smelled of old roses and mildew. The library, lined with towering, dust-caked bookshelves, held a faint aroma of ancient paper and something else, something vaguely metallic, like the server room. My skin crawled. Seth told myself it was just the smell of an old house, the decay of time. But the feeling of being watched, a subtle prickle on my neck, persisted. There was Seth truly alone in this vast, decaying place. The kitchen was a relic, a monstrous cast-iron stove dominating one wall, its chrome tarnished black. A single grimy window looked out onto an overgrown wilderness of a garden. The server room memory was fading, dissolving into the background static of my mind, leaving only a residual anxiety. This house, for all its decay, felt real, tangible. It was a solid anchor, a stark contrast to the shifting, impassable reality Seth just experienced. But even here in the solid reality, I felt a tremor of wrongness. Faint, breathy sounds, like secrets exhaled into the dusty air. I was in the library trying to find a lamp that worked when I first heard it distinctly. My name. Seth. It was soft, almost imperceptible, but clear enough to make me freeze, my hand hovering over a brittle lampshade. Nothing. Heart gave a sickening lurch. I was alone. I had checked every room on the ground floor, and the upper floors were inaccessible, the stairs too rickety, blocked by fallen debris. Yet the sound was undeniable, heavy and resonant. Was it just the house settling, old wood groaning under its own weight? Or was there something else here, something that knew my name? The windows were too tall to reach, their heavy velvet curtains drawn shut. I didn't sleep much, if at all. By dawn, Seth was exhausted, my nerves frayed. The next day, the small things began. Seth left my flashlight on the bedside table, but later found it on the floor, beneath the bed, its beams still on, battery half drained. A heavy, leather-bound book from the library, one Seth been examining for clues about the house's history, was moved from the desk to a high shelf I couldn't possibly reach. Its spine was facing inwards. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'd knocked the flashlight off in my sleep. Maybe I'd put the book there and forgotten. My mind, I told myself, was playing tricks on me because of the isolation, the grief. I started talking to myself, a habit born of loneliness, now exacerbated by the unsettling occurrences. It's just an old house, Seth, I'd mutter, running a hand through my already messy hair. Drafts, dust. They were no longer just my name. They were fragments of sentences, too garbled to understand, but always with a mournful, drawn-out quality. What were they trying to tell me? One afternoon, while exploring the disused pantry off the kitchen, I found a small wooden box tucked away behind sacks of what looked like petrified flour. It was old, intricately carved, and smelled faintly of lavender and something acrid, like burnt sugar. My fingers trembled as I unlapped it. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded silk, was a small, tarnished silver locket and a bundle of yellowed letters, tied with a brittle ribbon. This was it, I thought, a tangible piece of the house's past, a clue. But what secrets would it reveal? The letters, written in a spidery, elegant hand, dated back to the late 1800. They were from a woman named Elena to her sister, chronicling her life in the house. At first, they were mundane, describing garden parties and social calls. But gradually, the tone shifted. This sounded eerily familiar. He talks to unseen things. One letter read, her handwriting becoming frantic, slanting wildly across the page. He says they tell him what he already knows but cannot face. They feed on his sadness, sister. They grow stronger with every tear. My heart pounded. The entity. It fed on loneliness, grief, despair. And I, isolated and still reeling from my own losses, was a prime target. The letters ended abruptly, the last one unfinished, trailing off mid-sentence, a blotch of dried ink staining the paper. Had she too succumbed to the sorrow? That night the entity invaded my dreams. I was back in the server room corridor, the red light pulsating, the hum a deafening roar. But this time I wasn't alone. Alone, remember. They hissed, their words twisting my own memories, distorting the faces of those I had lost. My mother's face, my father's, contorted in grief, not for themselves, but for me. My throat was raw from screaming. I fumbled for my flashlight, clicking it on, but something was different. On the dusty floor by the foot of the bed lay a single withered rose. Its petals were a deep, bruised purple, almost black, and its thorns were impassably long and sharp, like tiny needles. It was the same kind of rose my mother had loved, the kind she'd grown in her garden. I hadn't seen one since she passed. Where had it come from? The entity was no longer content with subtle hints. It was actively manipulating my environment, blurring the lines of reality. I walked into the kitchen one morning and found it pristine, sparkling clean, a vase of fresh roses on the table, their perfume sweet and cloying. A cup of steaming tea sat beside it, waiting for me. My reflection in the window showed a younger, healthier version of myself, smiling. It was a cruel mockery, a vision of the life I had lost. I reached for the teacup, my fingers brushing against the warm ceramic, but as I did, the illusion shattered. It was everywhere in the creaking floorboards, the rustling curtains, the dust motes dancing in the faint light. It was feeding, gorging on my fear, my despair, my desperate longing for what was lost. Was this what Alina's husband had experienced? I fled the kitchen, scrambling back to the library, to the only source of sanity I thought I had, the historical records. I desperately searched for more journals, more letters, anything that could explain what was happening. My hands, trembling, pulled down a heavy, leather-bound diary tucked away behind a loose panel in one of the bookshelves. Its cover was blank, unadorned. I opened it, my fingers brushing against brittle, yellowed pages. The handwriting was different from Alina's, a strong, masculine scrawl. The entries were dated almost a century after Alina's letters. The diary belonged to a man named Arthur. His early entries described moving into the house, a new beginning after a personal tragedy. He described seeing his deceased wife, hearing her voice, only for the illusions to dissolve. Then I found it, an entry describing a red, humming place, a corridor of metal and endless light. The server room. Arthur had seen it too. "It shows you what you need to see, Seth," Arthur's entry read, his handwriting becoming erratic, almost illegible. "It twists the knife. It wants you to doubt everything. It wants your memories, your grief, yourself." The entry ended abruptly mid-sentence, just like Alina's letter, with a final, desperate scrawl. "Seth can't tell what is real anymore. Am I Arthur, or am I just another echo in this place? It's all me, isn't it? All of us." The final words were smeared, as if the pen had been dropped, or the hand had simply ceased to function. My vision swam. This wasn't just a haunting, it was a cycle. There was Seth, just another Arthur, another Alina, destined to lose myself to this house. My reflection stared back from the grimy glass of the tall window, but it wasn't quite my face. The eyes were too deep-set, the cheekbones too sharp, the smile too wide, too knowing. It was a distorted, marking version of myself, a stranger wearing my features, a ghost of a man I might become. The lips moved, forming words I couldn't.